This is the Millennials in Multifamily podcast, brought to you by Kronos Investment Partners. We interview industry experts to unlock key information that will help young professionals break into the multifamily world in order to create long-term and short-term wealth. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to iTunes and leave a rating and written review so we can reach more listeners.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Millennials in Multifamily podcast. I'm your host, John Stober, with my co-host, Fritz Ritter. And today our guests are Kelly, Stinson and Anselmo Torres. Kelly and Anselmo work for Sustainability Solutions, one of the leading national water conservation companies that specializes in reducing water consumption in multifamily properties. Both of them are extremely passionate that they are conserving our planet's most precious resource, while at the same time increasing the net operating income of apartment buildings. Kelly, Anselmo, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. First things first, Kelly, how did you get the nickname the Potty Princess?
That seems to be a very popular question.
Yes, everybody wants to know.
I didn't know that everybody was so interested in that. I wish I had a better story about it, but it really started about 2 years ago. And as Anselmo and I have been out on this platform of education and awareness and running around these different events, I had a colleague in the industry that introduced me to one of their clients and said, "Hey, have you met the Potty Princess before?" And he thought it was funny, as in, because toilets aren't really sexy or exciting to talk about.
There's nothing sexy about toilets.
And sometimes it's really uncomfortable when you're talking about, double flushing or low flow toilets and stuff like that. So he thought that would be an entertaining way to open up the conversation, and it stuck, because then that individual introduced me to one of their colleagues, and then it's just kind of steamrolled, and it's really caught wind over the last year. So I'll live it. I'll breathe it. I'm okay with it. You may not remember my name, but you'll remember the Potty Princess.
Yeah, it's a great nickname. I'll sure never forget it. With that being said, you're mentioning toilets and water. Could you just tell our listeners a little bit about your company, Sustainability Solutions, and give everyone a little bit more of a background?
Yeah. Sure. So Sustainability Solutions, also known as SAS, we are a nationwide service provider. We focus on water conservation through the installation of ultra-high efficiency plumbing fixtures. So we're coming into multifamily and hospitality properties, and we are evaluating any of those inefficient plumbing fixtures, and we're removing those and replacing them with ultra-high efficient fixtures, which then will yield about a 20 to 40% decrease in the water and sewer expenses.
So a 20 to 40% decrease in the water and sewer bill. So does that translate to a 20 to 40% decrease in water consumption?
It actually does not. The water consumption, you will actually see a decrease on that of 30 to 60%, and that translates into a 20 to 40% reduction on the actual bill. So that's a great question, because so many investors and owners out there are like, "Oh, that's great. You're going to reduce consumption by 30% on my property, but how does that benefit me financially?" Let me just give you an example here. If we're reducing on average 200 unit property water sewer bill, we reduce that bill by $50,000, you're going to realize that back within the first 12 months. Okay, so on average, our owners are seeing a 12 to 16 month ROI. And in addition to that, if you're running, let's say, a 6.5% cap rate, that's going to be about a $770,000 asset value boost just on that project alone.
Ooh. That is incredible.
Yeah, it's good for the environment too. It's a total win-win situation for everyone.
Absolutely.
And there's that fluctuation because water rates and sewer rates across the country vary. So there's some markets where the water and sewer rates are really, really high. So that's, you'll see closer to that 40% in those types of markets.
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about your process when you're going into a property? When should we contact you and all that kind of stuff?
A lot of our clients now will engage us as soon as they are analyzing a property for underwriting. And the reason why they're doing that is because they're trying to build into the pro forma the effective ways to increase NOI. And we can engage on that side and provide a very conservative preliminary proposal so that you can run off of the actuals based upon assumptions and look at what the potential is for reducing those water sewer bills. At the point of acquisition and due diligence, we can come on site and complete a full assessment. And the full assessment will better articulate the actual consumption by unit, as well as what the actual savings will be. And Anselmo can kind of expand on what that full assessment looks like.
Yes. So this is a part that gets me excited. I've walked over 30,000 units across the country, so a little over 300 properties. I tend to believe I've seen it all. And then next thing you know, I haven't seen it all on that next property. So, and I was actually on a property like an hour ago doing this. During that assessment, we're accessing 100% of the units on that property. And as we're going through that unit, we're documenting the fixture flow rates on your bathroom sink, the kitchen sink, and then the toilet, the GPF of that toilet, and then the shower head. So we're documenting the flow rates on all those water fixtures. And then we're also notating any front of the wall leaks that we come across. So believe it or not, residents don't always report leaks. So
because they don't want you in their unit, or they're concerned that they're going to get blamed for that leak because they just don't understand that typically this is just natural wear and tear.
Yes. So we document all those leaks. And once we're complete with our assessment, we go ahead and provide you the feedback on what we came across on your property, as well as tighten up our proposal based on the flow rates that we captured during our assessment.
Yep.
Could you explain to everybody what GPF is?
Gallons per flush. So that's specifically to toilets.
So you're going through all the property or all the units, flushing all the toilets, running all the faucets. I mean, how long does it take to go through a typical unit then?
Now, we're not actually flushing all the toilets or turning on every single aerator. Like on the aerator, if you notice, it has listed what the flow rate is on that aerator. So if you take a quick look, most of them are anywhere from 1.0 to 1.5 to 2.2 to up to 2.5 on the aerators. And we did the same thing on the shower head. So if you look at your shower head tonight, take a look at it. It's probably going to list a GPM of what that shower head is rated. So that's what we notate.
That sounds super efficient then, if all you have to do is know where to look on the fixture.
Yes.
Yes. And we'll still listen for those leaks. So typically when you go in and you look at the toilet, a lot of times we're pulling the lid of the toilet because we're looking in the tank to see if the water is actually leaking, what the shape of the flapper is in, because those are things that we're going to report back if we think that property is good candidate of leaks, right? We're also looking on the faucets when we run those faucets. Sometimes residents will remove like the innards of those aerators. So when we turn the faucet on, a lot of times we'll see that and we'll make a notation about that in the full assessment. But for the actual financial analysis, we want to keep it very conservative with you all. And that's where we're going with the actual fixture rated flow rates and not taking into consideration the actual leaks and what that might be impacting.
So speaking of the financial analysis, before you can actually get into the property and see what the flow rates is and examine the fixtures, what are you looking for in that initial underwriting process when maybe there's some pictures online and a profit and loss statement?
We look for a couple of things. The age of the property. And I think kind of the funny thing that we've kind of equated this to now is what would be like if we were in the dating world.
Yes.
What would be our perfect date for?
Who would we swipe right on?
Right.
Which toilet?
Right, exactly. So we're looking for Class C or Class B property, anything that's built before 1995. So the perfect sweet spot that's just going to get us singing is going to be somewhere between like 1975 to 1988. Perfect.
Yeah. No major renovations, plumbing renovations.
Lots of value add sitting there. What we're finding is a lot of these investors are going in and they're doing these beautiful renovations on the property so they can get the rent bumps. And they're upgrading the bathrooms, but they're completely overlooking the toilets. And they're not thinking about that financial impact that those toilets have on that property. And so with that, we'll look at, again, the age of the property and the unit mix, because then at that point, we're taking into consideration the national average for multifamily, what's coming out of the EPA standards on how many times a resident might flush the toilet, which is 3 to 5 times a day a resident will flush the toilet. So we'll take a very conservative approach where we're going to sit on 3 flushes. Okay. And we're taking it by the number of front doors, not by the number of bathrooms when we're running that preliminary analysis, because we recognize in a 2x2 unit, a resident may not flush both of those toilets 3 times or 5 times each in a day. They may only use one bathroom, right? So that's why we want to be very conservative and careful as you guys are working through the numbers.
So is there an age property that your system is more difficult to install on, like before that 1970s?
We have also installed on properties that were built like 1910. I think that's the oldest property that we've installed on, and that was actually in Cleveland, Ohio. And we look for concerns when we're out on that full assessment. So if there's like cast iron plumbing, that's something that typically we'll want to go through a little bit more work on the backside, whether we're going to sample toilets out or whether we're going to ask additional questions to the on-site maintenance of, hey, are you jetting your lines on a regular basis? We're looking to see if there's trees that are growing really close to the buildings, because if it's an aging property, you might have roots that are actually growing through the plumbing lines.
Foundation issues too.
Yep.
These are all questions that we want to ask the maintenance staff up front. You know, hey, are you guys seeing these types of issues? And if we are, then maybe the answer is let's send you a sample, test it out. And if it works fine, then we'll move forward with the project. But it's all, due diligence that we do up front just to protect you as the owner and the investor before you make that investment.
Yep.
And we install.
And in the last 2 years, there's only been one property where I've actually had to modify the type of toilets that we put out there because there was concern of the efficiency of their plumbing infrastructure. And they're still running really well today.
Well, that's definitely a huge range of properties dating back to 1910.
Yes, so this is what we eat, sleep, and breathe about. I mean, it's kind of a quirky thing, but it's what fulfills us with saving water and saving our clients money. So we always, are trying to put the efforts out there and encourage those that have questions to be able to come to us and ask, because again, that's where we figured out that there really isn't a consistent platform out there to ask these types of questions of, hey, what are you hearing about this brand toilet? Or have you heard about people putting bricks in the tanks of their toilets to reduce the water flow? We'll answer those questions and we'll share some of that feedback.
Because replacing toilets, I mean, when you think of all the different value add opportunities,
you don't think about toilets.
Toilets is not sexy. A lot of people skip it.
No,
and they all look
not.
the same.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they're all white and they have a handle or a button on them. And yeah, I mean, there isn't anything really exciting that's going to change the bathroom look.
Until they see the bottom line and see that financial impact. Then they're like, oh, wow, okay, this is, now I'm interested.
Exactly.
You're totally right, though. It's always kitchens, appliances, floors, and updated paint.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. We just met with somebody last week at IMN because he was posting out on LinkedIn because we're always wanting to post videos about all the great things we're doing. And he was sharing these phenomenal upgrades at his property. And I was like, wow, I really like that. And I had put a message out on his post of, hey, are you paying the water bill? Is this an all bills paid property? And he had replied back nicely and said, yes, it is. And we're considering implementing RUBS. And I'm like, we need to meet because you're leaving money on the table. And so we met last week and we talked about this. Yeah. And he was like, that really makes sense.
It sounds like you're really all over the place, though, as far as what property types you're looking at. You're all over the country. Does that pose any challenges as far as, standardizing your systems?
So we are a nationwide service provider. So we're prepared for, to travel the country. We have 13 crews that travel the country nationwide, installing toilets, shower heads, and aerators for us across the country. So we are ready. Typically, the whole point of the assessment is really to prepare that install team ahead of time, so that, if there is cast iron plumbing or if there's any angle stop issues or if there's any flooring issues or any leaks that we may come across, they're already prepared in advance. So we really utilize that assessment to get ahead of any potential issues. That way, so as we are installing on your property, it's reducing the amount of tenant distraction and just makes it much more efficient.
So you have crews that travel to the properties in various markets. What would be kind of a typical project length? Is this pretty in-depth or is it kind of like a couple of weeks? What's your turnaround time?
So if you think about some of your properties, if it's 100, 200, 300 units, we're typically on and off within a week. So we install, and then so not only do we remove all the existing fixtures, we install ultra high efficiency fixtures, the Niagara Stealth brand, and then we are removing everything off of the property. Good Boy Scouts. I mean, we leave it better than what we found it. That's the goal. We're very efficient. They're very quick. Again, there's nothing fun about replacing that many toilets, but our crews, they've got a mindset that is, hey, we've got a job to do, and that's what we're going to do. So it's great to see them and the work that they do.
So you're a completely turnkey solution, though. You buy the materials, you have the labor. I mean, you can literally do everything from start to finish.
Absolutely. Yes. So we are a turnkey provider. Again, because if you think about how much time it would take maybe your on-site staff to install 50 toilets, that's a long time, and maybe they get one or two a day, but still, that's a long time. So when our crews go in and they're installing 50 to 60 toilets a day, you can typically see the savings within that first billing cycle after we've done the install. So that's one of the benefits of utilizing an organization like ourselves, like SAS, is the speed that we can install so that you can start realizing those savings as quickly as possible.
So how do you work with operators then who have their own crews, or let's say they have vertically integrated companies and they want to do the install themselves or have their own people do that?
We do product only as well. So that is an option. For our turnkey solution, I'll just go ahead and tell you the price because it's consistent. It's $275 per bathroom. So that $275 is a kit, and it includes the toilet, the shower head, the aerators for the bathroom, and the kitchen sinks. So that $275 includes all of that, plus the labor and us removing everything off of that property. So that turnkey option is $275 per bathroom. If you have your own construction crew and you just want the product, we are more than happy to sell you the product directly. So depending on what you choose, it's going to be about $135 for the toilet itself. And then obviously any shipping or taxes would be added to that. But we can definitely do product only in those cases.
So for those owners that are doing the work themselves with their own crews, what are some big no-nos as far as water so that they don't end up flooding their kitchens and flooding their bathrooms?
Well, water is very tricky. It can be dangerous, especially on some of these Class B, Class C properties with the older piping, with the older angle stops. especially with CPVC piping. Things get old over time and they get brittle and they crack. So, it's something that we have trained plumbers that are on the crews that are prepared for situations like this. So I would suggest just make sure you have a plumber that's overseeing the project that way, so you don't make more work for yourself than you need to, especially with water and especially with aging pipes. There's always a chance that something like that can happen.
Are you struggling to understand how to underwrite multifamily properties? Hi, I'm John Stober, and I completely understand your problem. I thought underwriting would come naturally to me due to my background in finance and accounting, but I quickly found out that there aren't a lot of resources that cover this subject. I had no idea whether what I was doing was right, wrong, or just original. I don't want you to have to pick up little nuggets here and there like I did. So I wrote an ebook called How to Analyze Big Apartment Buildings and Make Them Feel Small that puts together all the pieces of the puzzle. We're also giving away a deal analyzer with the ebook, and they're both completely free. Don't wait as long as I did to start chasing financial freedom. Go to bit.ly/underwriting ebook and get your free copy today.
Is scoping the lines something that you guys do in your due diligence, or is that more so something we would do and report back to you?
So again, we don't do it during the due diligence, but if we find out during that due diligence that maybe you guys are having issues with the plumbing or backup or piping, then we might recommend or ask, when was the last time you scoped the lines? Are you considering scoping the lines? Just because we don't want to run into any issues once we do that install. So it is a question that we ask either up front or during the assessment, just to kind of get some feedback on the condition of the property as well as, the pipes as well.
So I wanted to know, I think a lot of people would like to know, there's a few articles going around that are saying for these older properties, they need to have a certain amount of water flow going through their pipes to remove all of the particles. And if that doesn't happen, they can actually corrode the pipes and just cause more damage. How are you differentiating your service for like an older product, say pre-1970s versus a newer product in the 1990s that has PVC or PEX piping?
I'm glad you brought this up because obviously you're hearing it and we're hearing it as well. So we partner exclusively with Niagara and we install their products in all of our installs, right? So they have a Niagara Stealth toilet that is only 0.8 gallons per flush. So that's a huge difference than some of the other toilets that are out there. And believe me, not all toilets are created equal. There are some toilets that are 1.6 or 1.28 that are considered low flow toilets. The ones that we use, the Niagara Stealth brand, are considered ultra high efficient. So they utilize technology, but more importantly, they are MAP rated, right? So all toilets are MAP rated. And the Niagara brand, the Stealth toilet, is one of the top rated in terms of line carry. So basically what you mentioned, with only 0.8 gallons per flush, utilizing air, a vacuum-assisted technology, and that 0.8 gallons per flush water, it pushes everything down the line. So you get the crap out of the lines as all the way down the line. So it does have one of the best line carries out there. And again, the toilet has been out since 2009, roughly. We install this on properties across the country. Last year, we did over 30,000 toilet installs. We don't come across issues with this just because it is such a successful toilet. And that's why we're exclusively partnered with them, is because they work. And because of the type of properties that we're going on and these B&C older type properties, the last thing we want to do is install toilets that are going to create backup sewage issues and not get stuff down the lines.
So 0.8 gallons per flush, what would you say before the Niagara toilet is installed? What's a typical gallons per flush?
So typical, anything built after 1996 specifically, has to have a 1.6 gallon per flush, right? Anything pre about 1995 and older, It can range, but typically what we're seeing is 3.5 gallons per flush.
Holy cow.
Yes. So do the numbers on that, and you'll see right away that why we're able to reduce consumption so much.
Yeah, that's like 80% for an older property.
Exactly. Yes. So we come across it all the time. And the property that I was just at, it was 1988, and the majority of the property is like 3.5 gallon per flush toilets. Not only that, so again, not all toilets are created equal. The toilets that we use do not have flappers. A lot of toilets out there do. And the average lifespan of that flapper is about 2 years. So over the course of 2 years, if you haven't replaced that flapper, it is more than likely got a slow leak in that toilet. And it's just leaking, wasting your dollars every day. So our toilets don't have flappers, which is a huge benefit. You don't have to replace it. They're virtually maintenance free. They do have a 15-year warranty. So again, for me, it sounds like a no-brainer, but we love installing those toilets. They've been out on the market forever. They've been tried and tested. They just work.
So I'm not a toilet expert. Could you explain to me what a flapper is?
Yes. So, and you're going to do this whenever you go home. You're going to lift up that lid inside the toilet, right? And typically there's a chain that's connected to the flapper that opens up once you flush and lets all the water come in and out, right? So it's a seal on that tube. Now that flapper, it does age and it does get brittle and it does crack and it has a tendency to leak. Again, it only has a lifespan of about 2 years. And what's worse is a lot of people are putting those chlorine tablets inside their tank to just make everything smell better, look cleaner. That's just speeding up the deterioration of that flapper.
Really?
Yes. So you get that slow leak that just happens quicker.
I'm not kidding you. The next time I go to the bathroom, I'm going to go take the lid off and check the flapper.
There are a lot of investors, brokers that whenever they're doing a due diligence on a property, they call it flipping lids. So they'll flip the lid of that toilet, not only to see the condition of the toilet, but also typically they have a date stamp inside that tank. So if you see, 1980 or 1981, it's a 3.5 gallon per flush toilet. Anything after 1995, 1996, you should be able to see the 1.6 gallon per flush stamped on that tank in the back. But some of them are, over time, that just gets faded. You can typically see a date stamp as well as the gallons per flush stamp on that toilet tank. So flip the lid next time.
Flipping the lid.
Yeah.
For property owners with the rub system already in place, and maybe it's a smaller property where they're not really covering too much of the water, at what point does this system that you guys have make sense for them?
I think it makes absolute sense, right? What we want to do is, if you're going to implement rubs, you want to consider a rent increase. The last thing you want to do is put an additional expense on your resident that's inefficient, right? So if now all of a sudden you've passed on this really inefficient toilet, they know that it's going to cost them a lot of money, that rent increase is going to be a little bit harder for them to swallow. So implementing a water conservation before you do the rubs is a great way to help out that resident. Also, it's also like a marketing thing. If the comps in my area are virtually the same in terms of a 1-bedroom and 1 bath, and it's, let's just say $500, right? And the next thing I'm going to do is ask, well, what kind of expenses are there? If this 1x1 is $500 and the one right across the street is $500, what expenses am I looking at? If they tell me that my water bill is $100 and the property across the street is only $50, that can influence how they make a decision, right?
Absolutely.
The other thing too is, so if you have a flat rate of, you say $40 for a 1-bedroom, 1 bath, and maybe $60 for a 2-bedroom, 2 bath, over time, because of not only inefficient fixtures, but also rising water and sewer costs, the gap between what you're able to collect from that $40 and $60 plus what you are responsible for as the owner is going to continue to increase. So that's another reason why to consider water conservation if you're looking to implement rubs. Now, the other thing too is based on the city or location of your property, the regulation or what is allowed to be rubbed back. So that percentage that you are allowed to rub back that to that resident. Let's just say you're rubbing 75% back right now. If you are able to do that, and also, or if you're not at that level yet because you're afraid to get it to that 75%, you don't want to increase that cost for that resident. By implementing water conservation, now you can get to that 75%, and you might not even affect the dollar amount that they have to pay, the increase. Now you've reduced the amount that you have to pay as well. So it's just, I mean, I could keep going on and on, but again, rubs is great, but I think water conservation needs to be a part of that thinking as well.
Yeah. So do you recommend that, I guess, owners contact you before they start doing the rubs, or does it matter at what time?
Absolutely. We want you to engage us at all points. So if you're doing a due diligence and you're looking to submit an offer, engage us. Obviously, you can include it as part of your plan, right? If you're looking to put an offer on, really all we need for a pre-proposal is the property name, the property address, and the unit mix. And typically all that can be given to us from the OM, if you have the OM. And then we can put together that conservative pre-proposal. So now you have it built into your CapEx dollars ahead of time to execute that water conservation and then implement rubs. So yeah, engage us wherever you're at in the process. Even if you're maybe considering selling and you want to find a way to increase the value on your property fairly quickly, then consider water conservation, reach out to us, and we can at least get you a pre-proposal on what that would look like.
You've walked 30,000 units.
Yes.
That's a ton of units in your day. Have any of your clients been able to reduce their water and then get credits from their city, town, or a lower interest rate on their loan because their property is now more green?
Absolutely. So there are a lot of cities out there that do offer rebates, if you adopt water conservation specifically through toilets, installing more high efficiency fixtures. So always check with your city, always reach out. I would highly encourage that. Obviously with green lending as well. So if you do have a green loan and one of those requirements is to achieve water conservation, we would love to work with you. Over the course of the last 2 years, that's been a lot of our business is those investors, owners that were able to get a green loan. And one of the first calls had to be us because they had to achieve that water conservation. So there's many different ways to achieve it or look at the different rebate programs again, and as well as that green lending. It's not as common now as it was maybe a year to 2 years ago. What we're doing, specifically me and Kelly, is just educating as many people as possible about the financial impacts of water conservation on your property, both short-term and long-term.
So you're reducing water consumption, you're reducing operating expenses, potentially increasing income with rubs or sub-metering, and you can reduce the mortgage payment. That's pretty awesome. Like it's a win in any aspect you can think of.
Yes, and that's all financial. I mean, morally, it's also pretty neat to be able to reduce your water footprint, right? And protect one of our most valuable resources. So, I mean, that's one of the things that really excites me is the sustainability factor of it. But again, I know I work with a lot of investors, owners that how's this going to impact my bottom line? And how's it going to make me more money?
Well, back to Fritz's point about, your point actually of it makes your tenants happier because they have a lower water bill. I think especially if you have a very young demographic of tenant, they're very conscious of being sustainable. And I think it's more likely they're going to stay at your property for a longer term if you're being more environmentally friendly.
Absolutely. And what we're seeing, especially, and it feels like a lot in the North Carolina area, the Carolinas areas, student housing type projects or properties that are close to universities, we're getting a lot of interest from them because again, millennials have that mindset of, hey, I got to live here, but what are you doing in terms of sustainability? So that's where we come into play. It's where we're able to help out the investors and owners that are with properties around universities specifically.
Do you work with any other companies that kind of work on the other utilities, such as efficiency fixtures for electrical? HVAC people that I guess are in your network?
We do. We get that question a lot is, hey, you're helping me out with the water. Is there anybody else that you might be able to recommend for electricity, solar, any other type of energy initiative? So we do have a kind of like a partner network that we can definitely share. So if you do engage us and want to know more about water conservation or energy or electricity, we do have a partner network that we've kind of created over time that we can reference, those individuals out to you.
I wanted to get to our last section of the show that we call the Fast Five. They're the same 5 questions we ask all the guests who come on our show. My first question is, if you had to start all over again and you were in your early 20s, what would you do differently?
I would start investing in multifamily.
That's what we want to
hear. I didn't know much about this industry before. I've been in it now for about 3-4 years, multifamily specifically. And I was in the mindset of, hey, 401k, stocks, bonds, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm coming across investors, owners that are doing extremely well in real estate. So that would definitely be my answers. Invest in real estate much quicker.
That's definitely an answer we get a lot. Second question, how do you see young professionals adding the most value to experienced operators in this space?
The energy, the questions, and I almost feel like because they don't know, they are going to ask questions that are going to challenge that old way of thinking. And maybe just because that's the way you've done it for the last 10 years and it's been successful, well, guess what? Things may change over the next 5 years, and what you've been doing for the last 10 years may not work for these next 5 years. So the knowing what they don't know, really.
Especially with technology, everything just changes so much faster than it ever has.
That's a great point. Embracing technology, right? How can it make me more efficient? How can it not only serve me as a business or investor owner, but how can it serve my tenants, residents better?
What's the biggest mistake you've made in your career, and how have you since adjusted because of that mistake?
Again, I think that goes right back to question 1 is, get involved into real estate much quicker, right? I know I have personal goals of retiring as quick as I can and getting out of this quote unquote rat race to retirement. So investing in real estate much quicker, and that way, so I've got a mailbox money that's coming in and can take care of any needs that I have once I'm retired.
So here's our next question. It's pretty around millennials. What's your favorite way to incorporate technology or social media into your business?
Well, I'll say LinkedIn. Very, very active on LinkedIn. I think it's not a job site anymore, but embracing LinkedIn to connect with like-minded individuals, people within the industry, just so you've got a basic understanding or can learn more about what's going on in the specific industry that you're interested in. And again, it's that ability to connect with like-minded individuals online. And a lot of those online relationships turn into great relationships offline. So the opportunity to partner up with them offline as well.
And do you have a favorite book you would recommend to our listeners?
Oh, yes. Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I just got to see him speak, I think it was 6 months ago. And I felt like, why didn't I get this book 20 years ago? Why didn't I get this book 10 years ago? So I would recommend not only reading that book, but also adopting, the strategies and principles of that book as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I'd have to say that's one of the books that pushed me in this direction myself. It seems to be a good catalyst for everybody.
Oh, yeah. It's a complete mind shift. Again, I was raised where 401k, you stocks and bonds, you invest, and that's how you retire. Well, now I see things from a different perspective. And I wish I would have had that perspective in my 20s, but that's okay. I'm not that far away from my 20s, and I'll definitely be incorporating those principles and then teaching my kids, more importantly, hey, this is what you got to do and get into it early.
Yeah, my dad gave me that book when I was 16. I'm 26 now, and it's never left. The teachings have always been with me since the first time I read it.
That's awesome. He did you a favor.
Yeah, he did.
My son is 9 and my daughter is 11, but as soon as they get to maybe 16, I'll give it to them and say, here you go. Mm-hmm. Take this book and read it.
Well, Anselmo, Kelly, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. I learned a ton about how to not only help our planet, but also how to increase the net operating income and increase the cash flow of our properties. So just wanted to thank both of you so much for joining us on today's episode.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Millennials in Multifamily podcast, brought to you by Kronos Investment Partners. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a rating and a written review at iTunes so that we can connect with more people. Finally, head on over to kronosinvestmentpartners.com and sign up for our newsletter so you can stay updated on everything we're doing. If you're interested in partnering with us as we find new opportunities, you can also schedule a phone call with us under the Contact Us tab at kronosinvestmentpartners.com.